One of the most common questions I see when advising people in the corporate world is, how can I be more strategic? They've often come from a performance review where their manager has told them that to get ahead, they need to be more strategic. Their first question often is, what does it even mean to be more strategic? Specifically, in my position at the company, what does being strategic look like? I can help you with that. This is the 5th video in my series on scope, the perspective of your role in the organization. We're looking at scope through the scope chart that I introduced in the first video in this series. The scope chart gives a great perspective on what strategic thinking is. In the last video called Strategic Thinking Through Scope, I explained the various zones on the scope chart. That is, as you go up the chart, you move from the how zone through the what zone into the why zone. As you move through this chart, you move further from tactical day-to-day concerns. Each move up the chart requires you to think more strategically, until finally at the top, the world is almost entirely strategic thinking. But the core is on the 2 axes of the chart. At each level, you interact with some people, and you worry about a given period of time. At any position on this chart, movement to a higher job means changing your thinking in both dimensions. You need to look at expanding your capability on each of these 2 axes. Throughout this video, we'll be looking to expand your scope in all directions. That's how you get more strategic, by moving up both of these axes. But we'll begin right where you are, with a look around you. At each phase of your career, it's tempting to look up. It's tempting to look at this scope chart and say, hey, I want to be a director or a VP, put me up there. So you look at the people dimension or the time dimension and think, push me up on that axis. But how specifically do you do that? The best way is to not look up at first, but rather to look around. There are larger parts of the organization all around you. Begin there. So first, look sideways to your peers at your level. There are a lot of ways to work with teams at the same level, even in different areas of the company, especially in different areas of the company. You can ask yourself dozens of questions. How does my role or my team interact with the peer organizations? What do those interfaces with those other groups look like? Do we work in parallel? Do we compete? Can we work more effectively together? How can we at least get along better? Can I work with my peer managers to gain some economies of scale? Can we work to fill resource deficits for each other? Can I give them expertise they lack in exchange for help with our shortfalls? Should we coordinate on budgeting and planning? Instead of being natural rivals, can we help or use each other? This thinking works with peer groups in companies large enough to have multiple similar teams, several teams working in parallel on different products, for example. In most cases, senior leaders would love to see those teams working well together, helping each other. At the very least, just getting along so they don't have to referee internecine squabbles. This attitude is even more essential when working with parallel functional groups. As an example, a product team working effectively with marketing, sales, support, HR, finance, etc. Some of these interfaces are clear and obvious. The product needs marketing or manufacturing to be successful at all. What's less common is a fully productive and healthy relationship with HR, finance, or other parallel teams. Teams that are less obviously interdependent with yours. Part of what you can do to be seen as a great organizational player is to develop relationships company-wide with every function your team interacts with. Reach out and understand your HR team. Make friends with your finance overseers. Get closer to the marketing or sales teams. You don't have to work together at the start, just know the people and what they do. How? Ask them. Have a coffee or a quick Zoom chat introduction. Just get to know them. Ask them what makes their life fun, what makes their life miserable. Make the conversation about them so you can understand what makes them and their function tick. This helps not only make you and your team's life easier and less adversarial, but it also helps you appear to be a strong team player. Someone who can be counted on to minimize drama and work together to make things work better. And of course, for you personally, being known broadly across the company is almost never a bad thing. But we'll talk more about that in a later video when we talk about your career. So start first not by looking up, but by looking sideways to your peers in your area or even other complementary areas. Build productive relationships there. But none of this sideways thinking is really being strategic, unless, of course, you consider the career effect. It's really about being an effective team player. To be truly more strategic, you do have to look up on the scope chart. At each position in the scope chart, as I've noted repeatedly, you should be looking up or out on the 2 dimensions. You should be expanding your current focus of the organization to the next level above on that axis. And you need to look more into the future than your current job demands to the next increment on the time axis. If you treat each axis as a strategic measure, then being more strategic is looking further out on each axis. Note also that at each level as you go up, the perspective evolves. As I noted in the last video, you're moving from the how to the what to the why. Being more strategic means looking to the larger org, the longer time, to help figure all that out. First to seeing the what over the how, then expanding even further into the why territory. See the previous video on strategic thinking through scope if you haven't already. People often think they need to be futurists or visionaries to be strategic, that they need some grand vision for the future of the company or the industry, that they somehow need to have the magic bullet that will be the solution for the whole company decades into the future. They see a Steve Jobs or similar visionary and think that's what it means to be strategic. And then they burden themselves with this grand idea that they somehow need to be some kind of genius strategist from their seat as a line-level supervisor in a Fortune 500 company. But that's not what being more strategic means. It simply means peeking into the next level of both org and time. Remember, you just need to peek. You don't need all the answers. Just show some skill at making the move up. It helps to think about what it means to be promoted. When you're being considered for a promotion, great skill at your current job isn't the key. Just because you're a star where you are doesn't guarantee success at the next level. Yes, you need mastery of your current job, or no one's going to believe you can do the next one. Why promote someone who's struggling? But what most managers want when they look at whether to promote you is some evidence that you can do the new job, or at the very least understand the problems and challenges at that level, that you've thought about the next job and considered the many issues. You need to demonstrate that understanding. But then you ask, how am I supposed to understand a job I don't have? How do I get the perspective from a perch further down the ladder? This again is where looking sideways can help. Looking sideways offers many of the best clues to looking up. What are the common threads you see across the parallel teams? Do they all face similar challenges, competitors, or resource constraints? Is there something not just your team but the broader organization can do to address these? Are there economies of scale to be gained across the disciplines? As you move from thinking about how to what and on to why, are there ways to work together that seem missing? If you can use your perspective as someone who sees across the organization, even at your level, you'll be seen as someone who thinks strategically, as someone who can be useful to help in answering the larger questions. first moving from how to do things onto what things need to be done, and eventually to the why are we doing these things in the first place. Beyond looking sideways, you should look up just one level on the scope chart. To do that, you can use some inquiry and empathy. Look up to your manager and try to envision the problems they're facing. What are the challenges they see? Are they struggling to work across peer teams? Are they facing pressures to plan further out? Are they needing to present cogent ideas to their leadership? As you look at the hurdles your manager faces, try to understand the issues that make it challenging. Is it because there are competing priorities? Is it because of resource constraints? Is it because of internal political pressures? Try your best to understand the issues. Are there any ways you see those challenges could be addressed? Again, it's not essential that you have the answers. It's probably the case your manager doesn't even have them. What is essential, however, is that you see and understand the problems, that you have the strategic perspective, that you can see what someone at the next level is facing, that you can have a good conversation with your manager about those challenges. In fact, it's often a good thing that you don't have the answer, or at least don't blurt it out at every opportunity. You'll often lack all the pieces of the puzzle thanks to your limited perspective at your level. What seems like a clear answer might be seen as a naive approach to the problem. So don't overreach on the scope chart. As a frontline manager, don't approach the CEO with your obvious solution to the order delay in that other division. It's highly likely someone has already considered your idea. And because they understand that division better than you, they dismissed it. You'll just look foolish for your overreach. I'm quite sure you have great value to add when it comes to things at your level, perhaps even a level above, but it's unlikely you can place several levels above you. Not because you're not smart, rather because your role doesn't afford you the perspective needed to understand the nuances way over there or way out there. So again, what matters and what makes you look more strategic isn't having all the answers. You don't have to be a visionary or a futurist. You don't have to understand the entire corporation. You just need to have some perspective above your level on each of the two axes of the scope chart, to understand and work the organization just somewhat larger than your current role requires, to be able to think, see, and plan just a little further into the future than you do right now. If you can do that, you'll be seen as more strategic and be worthy of a move up. In a later video, we'll look at your career. We'll discuss in detail about what moving up on the scope chart looks like and how you can plan your move. But that's later. Next up, we'll look at the scope chart from a leader's perspective, how you as a leader can use the scope chart to be a better leader, to focus on the right things, to help your people grow. That's next time. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you won't miss each new video in this series. I'll see you in the next one using scope as a leader.